welcome to the Objective Secure podcast. My name's Mike.
Hi, I'm Emma.
This is episode 58, Holiday Road. We're going to be answering a listener query today.
Yes, so our main topic, the question came in from Aaron Jaw quite a while ago now, to be honest. But he said that he's thinking about travelling for gaming and wondered if we could do a podcast on the types of things to look at when you know, what kind of event is worth travelling for, really.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about some of the stuff, and we have touched on some of the travelling stuff in some of the past episodes. I think episode 11.
11 A and B, yeah.
So we've talked about it in the past if you want to go check it out in years gone by. And it is years gone by now since we are recording this in 2020.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this, Happy New Year.
Yeah.
If you're not listening to this, well, then you won't have heard that.
We should also say, because it is New Year's Day and it's a late recording, we're going to do this in one long take. Mm-hmm. No ad breaks, no cuts.
No editing.
Hopefully very little editing.
Although we've got 3 children and 3 dogs, a squawky bird, so
yeah,
who knows?
We are also, if you saw us on the live last Wednesday, we are in a new recording space, so the audio may sound a little different. I'm not sure yet. Mm-hmm. It's actually going to be interesting because Emma and I can actually look at each other now while we're recording this, which normally we sit side by side. So
yes, and I don't have to watch you scrolling up and down on your
I thought that was a benefit, so I can have all my screens open that I want, and you can't get upset with me.
Oh, I can. It's just move for something else. Okay, so before we hit the main topic, what have we got? What's news? Obviously, it's 2020.
It is 2020.
People are setting their resolutions for the year.
Well, one of the big pieces of news that we have is that Duncan has left Games Workshop. We saw that previewed about a week ago.
Previewed?
Well,
he's a special order model.
He is.
He's leaving Games Workshop.
There's a lot of people unhappy with him leaving. Not at him, but just the fact he is leaving.
Yeah, unhappy that he's leaving.
Yeah. We heard about it on a week ago. Mm-hmm. And he posted something on Twitter on, I think it was Boxing Day, that basically said, hey, he said he'd hoped to get to Boxing Day, so it must have been Christmas Eve or something.
Yeah, well, we spoke about it on Christmas Day, so that was a week ago today.
Yeah, so saying that, he's leaving at the end of the year, which is obviously now been and gone, so I'm assuming that's him done and dusted. Didn't say where or why or who or how or any of that other sort of stuff. But the end-of-year video that Games Workshop released, which this, I think, the second year, or maybe the third year they've done it, which is kind of a year-end recap of all the new models and books and stuff they've released, was Peachy and a face I didn't recognise. He's not the new painting guy. He's a new guy that I've not seen on their videos before. So, whereas in the past it's been Peachy and Duncan. So clearly they were prepared for him leaving.
Well, yes.
I've seen a lot of memes going around about how contrast paint killed Duncan, 2 thin coats versus 1 thick coat. But whatever he's doing, I've seen stuff talking about him going to Fantasy Flight Games. I've seen people saying he's going to Warlord Games, both of which are completely possible and viable endeavours. But
also both of which could be totally made up.
Completely rumour-driven at the moment. Wherever he goes, we wish him all the best. It was nice to meet him very briefly in Bugman's Bar a year ago, or just over a year ago now. Mm-hmm. That was probably the only real piece of news that I've seen. It's actually been relatively quiet on the release schedule on the Western Front, as it were. I've seen, obviously, Warhammer Community don't stop in terms of what they're publishing. And the stores are open today. On New Year's Day, at least here in Western Australia, they are. Which is an interesting one. We've seen a couple of previews now of Psychic Awakening Book 4, the Ritual of the Damned, which has been Dark Angels and Thousand Suns and Grey Knights. And they've kind of, I don't want to say padded, but when you look at sort of the release track from the 25th, we've got favourite novels, then a preview of the Tech Priest Grombrindal. I can never say that name right. The White Dwarf. Then you've got the on Boxing Day we had the New Year New Army hashtag. Then
of course. Then
they've basically just gone and said, here's Turn Signals on a Land Raider episode 40. Here's some Forge World gear. Conquest coming to Germany. Then they've done Miniature of the Year. Then they've done, coming soon for this, and Warhammer Underworld's in review, and they've kind of just, this last week has clearly been filler content.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Well, that's it. It's fair enough, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Keep going.
So Emma's just taking a photo of us for some bizarre reason while we're recording. I'm not quite sure why.
Filler content.
So yeah, the last thing they posted was the year in review with Peachy and Wade. Doesn't have the same ring, I don't think. Maybe I'm just used to seeing Duncan in there.
Yeah.
But so yeah, it's actually been a quiet period for releases and previews and stuff because of the time of year.
Well, yeah.
Seen a couple of rumour engine things. One thing I will have to comment on is they did a series of videos with James Workshop, I think his name was. Like a character sort of joke thing that they were doing on Warhammer TV about buying presents and buying gift vouchers and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Which was quite entertaining to see. And I really like the fact that they've sort of gone all in terms of being a bit tongue-in-cheek with some of it and embracing some of their roots, because a lot of the early days of Games Workshop were, mocking different parts of the political spectrum and stuff they were dealing with in the late 80s and early 90s.
A bit less PC and a bit more fun.
Yeah. Gazgul Magurak Thraka was a play on Margaret Thatcher, and a lot of the comments for that particular orc character were about hobnail boots and downtrodden miners, and then you also had things like Clouseau, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, it was a mishmash of characters they made into an Inquisitor and all sorts of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it feels a little bit of an irreverent return to some of that stuff, which is nice. We've also seen nominations for the 2020 Warhammer Heroes now close. They closed at midnight on the 31st of December, so hopefully you got your nominations in by the time you're hearing this.
Did you get your nominations in?
I did put 2 in.
Yeah, I put some in too.
We never talk about that. We just do them, so who knows what that means.
See whether we nominate the same person or
what happens.
People.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll see some more Australian
Aussies,
Warhammer Heroes, yeah.
But yeah, we've had a fairly quiet break. I mean, there's been a little bit of hobby turn up in the house here. Not too much, actually, this year, not compared to some years. And my Forge World order did arrive pre-Christmas.
Yes.
I need to be partly miscast, so...
Yeah, well, perhaps it's not. Perhaps it's a new version of casting where there's soft and malleable canopies.
Yeah. If you've not seen them, there's a Warwalker variant from Forge World called the Wasp, which uses resin legs and thrusters and a modified cockpit. So instead of using one of the hard plastic clear see-through canopies, it uses it's a resin cast canopy that kind of wraps up and over the Warwalker, which is fine. And I've built 4 Wasps so far. 2 for my Corsairs back in 2017. And then I've got this squad of 3, and I only had 2 and I needed the third. So I ordered the third, and the canopy that's come is so soft and malleable I can push it flat and then pick it back up and just bend it back into shape without any heat, without any any force. It just bends
molds
and
between your fingers.
Yeah. Whereas the other ones are nice and solid, and you have to heat them with a heat gun or a hairdryer at the very least to kind of get them to fit properly, because they are an odd shape and they do tend to get a little bit affected by the flight in terms of heat and temperature and pressure, I assume, in the aircraft as well. So Forge World, though, being the customer service team that they have, just went, yep, not a problem, we'll send you a new one, which is nice.
Yeah.
So we'll hopefully that'll get resolved very shortly. And then I've got my Wraithseer here half built, which is a model that we've seen a few events locally start doing no Forge World, which I find good and frustrating. I think it's good because it's good to have a variety in events so that you don't just play the same event again and again and again.
I think there's ways to do it, and I think that it does really impact on people whose army is reliant on Forge World.
I think...
Given that it's so much more accessible these days.
I think reliant is the wrong word for it. I think that people spend the money on these toys, and in the last 4 to 5 years in particular, Forge World has disappeared in terms of a sub-branch of Games Workshop, and they are advertised on the Warhammer community page. The chapter-approved books for 40k now have all the points values for them in. Like, they're part of the mainstream game. And there are parts of the world, the ETC being probably the biggest proponent of No Forge World, which I think is a historic reference to, when you go back to 4th and 5th edition, where the rules were opponent's permission and you have to do this and you have to do that, and they were quite badly balanced. Some of the Forge World ones these days aren't much better, but at the same time, I do find it a little bit frustrating for some events to say no. I get why they do it, but 99% of Forge World units are arguably worse than what you get in the codexes these days. So I've got most of the Wraiths here cleaned up, and I'm just trying to decide, do I actually go through the process of magnetizing the shoulder weapons so that I can pop the D cannon off and put standard heavy weapons on it and just count it as a Wraith Lord? And there's a part of me that goes, yeah, I really should do that. And there's another part of me going, I've already got 3 Wraith Lords. I can only ever run 3 Wraith Lords. Maybe I'll just build this as a Wraith Seer and be done with it.
Yeah. Well, I guess in that context, what's the point of doing it?
Yeah. Other than the fact that I could paint it to match
the army.
The others. So, yeah. But you know what? It's good. I've got it's a kit that I have wanted for Yonks and haven't had. That was a very Australian colloquialism there.
Yonks means a long time.
It's one I've wanted for a long time, and I've never bothered to pick it up. And so, thank you to my mother-in-law for buying it for me for Christmas.
I'm sure you're very welcome.
Yeah. So, unlike a lot of these kits, I'm actually building it straight away. I built the Wasp first, and then this one's getting built at the moment, and then I'm going to aim to have an army on the table in about 6 weeks.
Awesome.
But I'm starting now, as in...
So you can get started now, then get distracted, procrastinate for 5.5 weeks, and then finish
and
it
then paint it in 48 hours.
Yeah, perfect. I know the process.
The only problem I've got at the moment is the colour scheme I've picked. I want to put them all on snow bases to match the rest of the armies that I've been doing for my Eldar for the last few years. And they're going to be basically white, which white on snow bases I kind of struggle with a little bit, so I'm going to have to make sure. Because it's going to look weird. There's not enough contrast between the base and the model.
Well, isn't that kind of the point of camouflage and stuff like that?
Yeah, but it doesn't visually work.
Well, you wouldn't put a camouflage painted model on a snow base. So I think it's
no,
fine
but
to
like
put
if I were going to paint like a camo cloaked eliminator, like a Space Marine sniper, I'd do the camo cloak in the white and grey and pale blues, but then I'd make sure he had black boots. The rifle would be black. Like, I'd make sure there were contrast colours there to give it shape. And the Eldar Wraith army, which I've got planned, don't really have that to do it on. Like, I can paint the knee pads and the shoulder pads and the weapons and those sorts of things. But it feels to me like I have to paint the lower leg and feet all sort of the same as, because they don't wear boots.
Yeah.
So I've got an older metal model here that I'm going to test a colour scheme on, which if I ruin, I can just chuck in acetone. So we'll see what he comes out like, and we'll get some photos onto the Facebook page at some point in the next couple of days once I've got the colours on it and repainted the base. See what it looks like. And then I found 5 more metal ones, which I've clearly half paint stripped at some point in the past.
I think they might need all paint stripping, actually, given how they look.
They are looking a bit worse for wear.
Yeah.
So yeah, army in a box scenario. So let's move on though, because there's not really too much to cover in terms of releases and stuff.
Nope.
So we're going to talk some events now.
Yeah, so as I said, we had the question come through from Aaron a little while ago about what to look for in an event to, I guess, work out whether or not it's worth travelling for. And when I sent that through to Mike, he said, "Oh, well, that might be a good segue to kind of look at the circuit that's being put on by Down Under Network."
Yes, or Down Under Pairings is. There are 2 distinct entities there.
I know, that's why I said it with the questioning inflection. So I thought I was going to get it wrong.
So Down Under Pairings has set up an event series on downunderpairings.com. If you head to the main page, hit circuits at the top panel, there's a drop down that says Down Under Championships. So when you open that page, it gives you some information on the events that are listed, the minimum attendances, the army sizes, and how you go into the draw for the event. So just to very, very quickly cover that. It's an inclusive circuit with the goal to be as open as possible. All the events are held in Australia and New Zealand. Now, so basically any event that you attend that's ranked in Down Under Pairings will get you points towards your total.
Mm-hmm.
However, to win the main prize, the season prize, you have to have participated in at least 2 certified events, which are the ones we're going to be talking about today,
Mm-hmm.
And be in attendance at the season finale. So, there's one in every state, and then the season finale is in Victoria, which is the only...
There's not one in every state. I can't see one in Tasmania here.
Oh, no. So Tasmania and the Northern Territory aren't represented at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
The Northern Territory, we've actually been unable to find a competitive gaming group in any way, shape or form in the Northern Territory. I'm sure there are players, but we've not found anything as a committee that happens up there. And the Tasmanian region does have a national rep for the 40k circuit. However, they're in a rebuilding phase at the moment and don't really have an event to travel for at the moment. The last time that we had a serious event in Tasmania was 2015.
And that was ATC.
That was ATC.
Yeah. So before we get into going through this, let's actually go to... So I'm going to read out Aaron's actual question and let's see if we can deep dive into that for a little bit.
Very quickly before you do,
Okay.
I just want to cover a bit more about the championships because there is an info tab there. So the season prizes, which is kind of the bit I wanted to talk about. So you have to have participated in at least 2 certified events and be at the finale.
Yes.
So while the final list of prizes is up for grabs is still in development, Down Under Pairings will be sending the winner of the DARP championships to an invitational 40k event, including flights, accommodation, and entry to the event from the list below. As new events become available to us, we will add them to the list. So the 2 events that are on the list at the moment as possible prizes for the winner, because obviously they're trying to give you space to pick the one you want to go to. The first is the LVO, and the second is the Nova Open in Washington. The event format across the certified events, and all events for that matter, there's no forced format. So some of them will be ITC format, some of them will be ETC format, some of them will be custom styles, depending on the event, and the certified ones are all the same. So if you do manage to finish number 1, having attended 2 of these events, and you're at the finale, then there's potentially a free trip up for grabs to some of the biggest events in the world.
So I had hoped to deep dive into this sort of a bit later on, but we're here now, so let's go with that. Does it have to be and the finale, or can the finale be one of those 2? This
specifically says, to be eligible for the season prize, you need to have participated in at least 2 certified events and be in attendance at the season finale.
The reason that I question that is because it's listed as one of the certified events.
I think that's not necessarily the certified event so much as... I know that that's what it says on there, because it does say the following list is all the certified events for 2020. I don't believe that that's the case, because it's the 2020 season, whereas that event's happening in 2021 because of the way the sequence works. I will probably try and I might even try and message the organizer while we're chatting and recording this, and we might be able to have an answer for you.
Yeah, I would imagine that you would have to attend 2 and the final.
Yeah, I believe it is to the final.
It's just that the way that it's written, because it's in there as listed as one of the certified events, are you actually ticking off 2 of those criteria by attending the season final as one of your certified events, and you're also attending the season final because it is, by its very nature, the season final. All right, can we come back to those at the end? Because I just want to go through what this question was and have a look into it, and then we'll come back to that.
Okay.
So the question was, perhaps a conversation on what 40k gaming events around Australia are worth travelling to. I'm looking at going to maybe 2 next year myself, but which ones?
Yeah.
So very open question there. But how do you actually work out whether an event is worth travelling to? So
Yeah, okay, that's a tough question.
it is.
I think there has to be... I mean, if you looked at, say, the London GT from a couple of years ago, everyone was keen to go, and then they...
yeah, I mean, they had 400 people attend.
And then they clearly took a hit the following year based on what they'd managed to do in that particular year. I think the internet will provide you a lot of information these days in regards to past versions of the event.
How do you find the events, though?
Like the big ones?
Yeah.
I think between down
I
under...
was looking for different events to go to on New Year's Eve, and I struggled to find them. How do you find gaming events if you're potentially relatively new to this? You don't know what you don't know. How do you know what to
Well,
search?
and that's what I was about to say, is if you're an existing gamer, then finding events in down under pairings or best coast pairings is actually pretty easy.
Depending on how far in advance people register them. I mean, are our events for this year, are they registered in down under pairings
A couple
already?
of them are, yeah. They're not, I mean, I haven't got masters in there for 2020, which I'll, they don't take long to actually just put them in there and tag them up.
But, if you're looking for events to travel to and you're using something like Down Under Pairings as your search engine, I know that we don't put our events in there.
No, not at all. We've got events up to April in there at the moment.
I was thinking often when we're getting busy,
Three
we're
to
getting
4
events.
months.
Well, sometimes it's 6 weeks before.
No,
when they're going in.
normally it's at least 8. Like it might not be completed, but there's a version there that you can register for already in there. Normally 3 months out.
All right, let's say 3 months. If you're planning on an international trip or
Yeah,
interstate
that's
trip,
hard.
is 3 months enough time?
No.
So this is probably a note to us. We need to get all of our events into Down Under Pairings now. And by us, I mean you.
Yeah,
'cause
I was about to say.
I don't know how to do that. So, but yeah, it does come to how do you actually find them?
I think if you're in a lot of the Facebook groups these days have that, hey guys, I want to travel to America to play 40k tournament. Recommend me events, and you'd probably find stuff relatively easily and quickly with people going, I go to this one or I go to that one. And the big names will usually pop out of that conversation. Things like Adepticon, Nova, LVO, SoCal,
ETC.
Bay Area, like a lot of the West Coast ones will pop out relatively quickly. I don't know of too many that happen like New York. I'm not aware of any major ones that happen in and around that space. I feel like what we'll be looking at, was it Chicago? Adepticon's over that way, isn't it?
Yeah, Adepticon's in Chicago.
Yeah. So I think I think you have to go into...
But America's quite good at publicising it, whereas, if you look at UK and Europe, obviously we know London GT.
The Alliance
and
Open.
Alliance Open.
Yeah.
And ETC. Those are probably... Which I know there's singles days for ETC as well.
There are singles,
so,
yes.
Those are probably the only ones that I know. So I could probably list 20 in America, and I've got to 3 in UK and Europe.
Yeah, look, I mean, the Warhammer World Heats that happen at Nottingham are obviously...
different.
Yeah, they are a different beast because of the way they're run and whatnot, but they do exist and they're relatively easy to find out about. And I think that as native English speakers, I don't know I would go actively looking for a tournament in, say, Germany or...
I would hasten
Poland?
to guess that most of the people at a German tournament probably speak English better than we do.
Look, it depends on what version of English you want to talk about.
Yeah,
but no,
well, you just said yonks earlier, so I'm going to say our version of English.
What I mean, though, is that I think there's a natural sort of mental hurdle where if I'm going to travel for a tournament, like there's one... it's the invitational one that happens in Gibraltar.
Oh, I would so love to go there.
I can't think what it's called now. I actually got an invite a couple of years ago. It's run by SN Battle Reports, and it's going to bother me that I can't remember the name of it, so I'm going to look it up while we're chatting.
Scroll and annoy me, yeah. Just so you know, being on this side of the computer and seeing you scrolling is still annoying.
Really?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
'Cause I know
that's
you're
why
not paying attention to what we're talking about because you're too busy
Yep.
being distracted with something
I'm
else.
completely okay with that.
Did you find it?
I've got many search results when I've put in SN Battle Reports Gibraltar.
Okay.
So I'm just going to find out the actual name of it because they've got a 40k GT that they've announced for April in 2020. First search result.
So going back to the
No Retreat, that's what it's called.
Okay.
Which is the invitational version. You have to apply, and it's a hobby. It's a main hobby event. There's some amazing armies that go to it.
Going back to the question, though, I think that one of the things that we talk about in the tabletop tournament prep guide, which is available on our website for the low price of $5, or it's free if you become a patron. That's a little infomercial. Oh, we said we weren't doing ad breaks. There you go. I snuck one in. Now I'm going to choke.
There you go. Serves you right.
So we did talk about it a lot on the Patrons Only podcast as well when we went through the tabletop tournament prep guide. That is a mouthful.
It is.
Is about having a clear goal. And I think that in order to work out which events are worth going for, you do actually need a goal in mind first. You need to know what is it that you're hoping to get from going to that event.
Yeah.
So if you're hoping to play against the best army or the best armies and the best players in the world, that's going to impact the kind of event that you're going to go to.
Well, that's it.
First, do you want to go and hang out and, you know, make some friends, and like the difference between coming to WA Masters or going to Linebreaker down in Albany, like they're really different events.
Yeah, they are. I think you can, a lot of the big events, like using LVO as the benchmark, because ultimately it is the biggest event in the world.
That we know about.
No, I don't think. I mean, it's 1,000 registered players for 2020, I believe.
For 40k?
Yeah, it's
wow.
Like it was insane. It was over 600 last 2019. Yeah. I believe I saw a comment a couple of days ago that it was closing on 1,000. Which is...
Where do you put 1,000 players?
Well, I know that...
Think of the emergency evacuation plan for that.
Well, I know that...
How many fire wardens have they got? Somebody Google that for me. How many fire wardens have they got for LVO?
I know that Reese...
I want to see white hats and fluoro jackets.
Frontline Gaming have actually moved their... They moved their...
Just keep talking.
I'm just going to keep going. They moved their family. Like, they've actually left California now, and they now live in Nevada.
Yeah.
And all bar one employee moved as well. So the company stayed together, and now they're living not in Vegas, but they're living in Nevada. And I know that prior to that announcement, Reese was saying that they basically got like a year at I think 2019 was the last year they had at Bally's.
Yeah.
And I think they had a new bigger venue for 2020, or is it 2021? I'm not sure. Because 2020, I'm assuming it's the same ballroom and stuff that we had in 2017. The space there will be enough that you just take over more of the other space, and you could probably still get 1,000 people in. It'd be cozy as anything, but you could do it.
We would struggle to get 1,000 players.
No, we couldn't do it in the present format we have.
Oh, not in the location that we've got. No, but even somewhere like the convention centre, I think we would struggle to get 1,000 players.
Well, 500 tables at roughly 10 square metres, call it 12, because that's roughly what it works out to be, assuming you want to be able to walk all four sides of the table.
Which we do.
You're talking...
6,000 square metres?
Yeah, that's insane.
It is, because it is insane.
And that's not taking into account anything else that's going on for that sort of event, which obviously LVO have some vendors that turn up. They have multiple gaming systems like we do for show.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's huge.
It's a suburb.
Yeah, it's enormous. It is just outright...
I know the hotels in Vegas are effectively a suburb.
Some of the big ones are, yeah.
Well, they're a block, I guess, probably.
Well, there's only one that's the full block, which is Caesars. Caesars has its own block. I don't think they'll be going to Caesars.
Yeah, probably not.
But when you go to LVO, yes, you can play against the best in the world, but it's such a big event that unless you have a perfect run, and even if you do have a perfect run, you're unlikely to... Like, there's a chance you still don't play in the final day.
Yeah, well, that's it with 1,000 players.
Well, that's it. There's literally no way of...
You'd need to be running that for 5 days.
To get it... No, 4 days. 4 days would let you have a a single winner if you just kept doing it by process of...
Would it?
Yeah.
1,000 goes down to 500, goes down to 250, goes down to 126, goes down to 64, goes
32.
down to 32, goes down to 16, goes down to 8, goes down to 4, goes down to 2.
Which gives you a single
10.
winner. So 9 rounds gives you a single winner. So, but the second they break 1024 is the magic number. Because it's obviously once you work it backwards, the second they hit 1025, you need another round. So it's a bit crazy when you actually look at it. So that sort of event, you can have multiple goals. Like you can go to that one and go, cool, I'm hanging out and playing games and having 3 days of... Because there is a singles RTT one-day event on day 3 if you don't make the final.
Yeah.
I'm just listening to that bird. If you can hear it in the background for the recording, I may have to move it when we record because he's been quite noisy.
We're just bringing nature into our recordings.
It's a learning experience for 2020 because this is our first one for 2020 in this little space.
Yeah.
So I think LVO...
When we get some walls built, it will really help.
Yeah, it will. I think LVO is one of those events where you can't generally go too far wrong in going and being part of that experience because it is the biggest event in the world. And that can often be enough for you to go and hang out and meet people and play games. And Vegas has obviously got a lot to do outside of the tournament.
Yeah.
So going there and going, oh, cool, I'm going to go paintballing or I'm going to go to the clubs or I'm going to go out to restaurants or I'm going to go and see this or do that. There's so much in Vegas you can go and do.
And compared to Perth, Western Australia, I found Vegas really quite affordable.
Oh, yeah. As an Aussie...
Yeah.
Vegas isn't terrible.
Yeah. So I went out to dinner with some friends. One of them's been over in London for the last 10 years and she came over here and was sat next to her and she's going, Emma, you don't understand. I paid $10 for watermelon. Watermelon, $10 for watermelon. And, you know, I guess living in Perth has gone up quite significantly price-wise over the last 10 years that she hasn't been here.
Yeah.
So we're used to the cost of living being really quite high. So going over to Vegas, we found that, we did find it affordable. Drinks were cheap, food was cheap. Going out to different shows or going paintballing or going to shoot guns was all affordable. Well,
the most expensive thing we did when we were in Vegas was my cars.
Yeah.
But even that, when you compared to... Like, I drove the Nissan GTR and the Ferrari 458 and did, 25 laps or something between the two cars.
Yeah.
Doing that here in Perth would be... I dread to think how many thousands of dollars.
Well, I know how much it costs to do the half-day rally drive with the Evo that I got you for your 30th birthday. So that's a decade ago.
It is a long time ago.
And... yeah, that was incredibly expensive then. So, you can't do stuff like that here as easily. Insurance is just
that's
killer.
it.
So I guess that's one of the other things to think about, that when you're going, we sort of think, and I'm not trying to promote tourism outside of Australia, but I would expect for it to be a lot cheaper for us to go to, and again, I'm talking from WA, a lot cheaper for us to go somewhere like Sydney than for us to go to Vegas. But actually...
it's not.
It's apart from the fact that you do have to take more time off work in order to go to Vegas or I guess anywhere else in America, it's more affordable because accommodation was so much cheaper and food was so much cheaper and entertainment was so much cheaper. Whereas when you go to Sydney, your taxis are expensive and your accommodation's expensive and your food's expensive. And
we had this conversation with Chris from CanCon, which is probably one of the biggest 40K events that happens, or the biggest convention, I suppose, that happens in Australia at the moment. As a West Aussie, going to CanCon costs the same as going to LVO because the flights to get into Canberra, and then you can't stay at the venue, so you're paying Canberra prices to stay somewhere. Then you're having to Uber or taxi or whatever your poison is there to get to the event. And then you're paying Canberra prices to eat out. And then you're flying home. So yes, you can leave on the night before the tournament, fly in at midnight, play the tournament, and then fly out at the end of day 3 and fly home.
For West Aussies, though, that is still, we're still having to take time off work in order
Well,
to go to events.
Yeah, look, I mean, you could do it. If I were younger, I could do it.
Not a 3-day event. I don't think so.
Well, because, I mean, CanCon's this is the 25th, 26th, 27th. So there's a public holiday in there. But, like, you'd basically end up only having to take a day in theory. If you caught the right flights, you could.
However, if you lived in Melbourne or Sydney, you don't need to take time off
exactly.
work.
Whereas the flight to Vegas is only a couple $100 more than Canberra, but the accommodation is significantly cheaper in Vegas because you can actually stay with a discount at the venue.
You also get luggage when you fly to Vegas.
That is true.
Whereas you have to pay for that when you fly within Australia.
Like when the year that I did LVO, when we did the maths, it was cheaper, or it wasn't necessarily 100% cheaper, but it made more sense. That's it. It was within spitting distance of each other. I mean, I'm talking less than $100 difference to do Vegas. The only thing that it cost was an extra 4 days because of the travel time.
Yeah.
Because you had to get there. By the time you had your connections and all the rest of it, you were like, we got in on Thursday lunchtime or Thursday early morning, and then had the afternoon in Vegas, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we left Monday afternoon. And again, because of the time difference, we got back Tuesday night. Yeah. So I think that's sort of a hurdle as West Australians we have to deal with. That
perhaps East Coasters don't so much.
Yeah. It's a really strange problem to have, but it's one that I suppose organisers on the East Coast do have to consider for West Aussie attendees. That's a factor for us. And if you can afford the time off, then flying it into an international and then extending your stay to go and do something cool there, whether it's Vegas to hang out and be in Vegas for a few extra days, or stopping back at LA on the way through doing Disneyland, or heading east over to New York, and there's a whole bunch of other potential there. Yeah. Even stopping doing a stopover at Hawaii, or
you're trying to sell me into going again, aren't you?
I am so doing that. But and it's kind of the same with any of those events around the world. Like if you flew to the Alliance Open in Amsterdam, you're in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Like that, you want to go and see Prague, it's a stone's throw away. You want to go to Berlin, it's a stone's throw away. You want to go to...
You're not selling me on this. Prague is,
Oh, I'd love to go and visit Prague.
When I went to Prague, it was literally thigh deep in snow. And so I don't have particularly fond memories of it. It was cold.
But even if you did London GT,
you're so close to everything.
Exactly. I want to go to Spain. I want to go to Madrid.
Yeah. Fairly sure that's in Spain.
Yeah, but that was my point. That sort of thing. If you're in those other parts of the world as an Australian, you've already spent the money to be there.
I will say that does increase the cost of your trip.
It does
quite significantly.
But
particularly if you're trying to sell it to your partner and let's take the wife and kids along as well. It does go from
it becomes instead of a $2,500 trip, it's a $20,000 trip.
Yeah. Totally worth it.
Yeah. But, then that's kind of part of the goal setting thing. You have to decide why you're going, and is it a family holiday, or is it just I'm going to go and game for 3 days and hang out with my mates? Are you going by yourself is another factor.
Yeah. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Because that is actually, if you're going by yourself and you're an introvert, then are you going to be able to, I guess...
Yeah, create connections and go and do that sort of stuff.
Will you feel awkward and uncomfortable and actually not enjoy it?
Yeah, and that is definitely a factor, and it's obviously not an uncommon thing to have in the hobby in terms of the player base.
Safety in numbers.
Yeah. But... I certainly think if you understand why you want to go to those events, then it makes it far easier for you to decide kind of on which event you might want to go to, because like LVO, I mean, I was very fortunate when I went to LVO because the time that I've spent on World's End Radio and, obviously the stuff that we've been doing here, it created a lot of connections, virtual connections at the very least, online through different people, other podcasts, painting groups. When I hit Vegas, even though I did have other West Aussies with me, I had people coming up and saying hi to me.
And other Australians as well.
Yeah. So it made going into that hall for me was going into any other gaming hall. But I don't know that if I'd gone by myself, I don't know it would have changed anything for me.
It wouldn't have. That's your personality type, and that's exactly what I was going to say. You wouldn't have, and even if you didn't have the virtual connections with people, like that still wouldn't have been an issue for you.
No, probably not.
No. Would have been fine.
Yeah, so I think understanding yourself is probably an important part of it as well. Are you going by yourself? If you are going by yourself, then are you going to be able to make that leap and enjoy yourself by walking into a room of strangers? If you're going with mates, we talked about this in the travelling episode, I would always suggest share accommodation if you can, partly because it cuts down on the cost, but partly because it creates a team dynamic where...
There's someone to make sure that you're sober enough and awake in the morning to get to your first game.
No, that's on you. I will nudge you and make sure you are conscious. After that, it's on you. And I know plenty of people who are the same, who may maybe not even nudge you awake. But yeah, I think the share experience means that you're going, like particularly if you're flying together.
Yeah.
And if it is only for the tournament and you're not hanging around for a holiday, then going as a group, being on the flight together, sharing ideas, it becomes like a team dynamic, but not a team, as it were. And I think that really adds to the trip. It certainly has every time I've done that sort of trip.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think understanding what you want out of the event is probably the most paramount thing to consider. You're right.
And then I think the next thing to probably have a look at is something that you touched on before a little bit around the event's reputation. Yeah,
you definitely have to look at the history of the event and what everyone said about it in the year before.
Yeah, and I think I would be quite annoyed if I had paid $2,500 and travelled for however long, taken time off work, time away from family, and get there and find out that there's 10 players playing in a tin shed with no air conditioning and one bucket out the back for people to pee in.
Yeah.
You know, so what kind of things are important to you, and look at the reputation around that. And, you know, same with terrain. Terrain is something that's important to me. I wouldn't want to be playing with...
what we've seen in a couple of the other events in years gone by.
Thank you very much for cutting me off before I just said what I was going to.
Yep. Yeah, we have seen some, particularly for competitive 40k events, the importance of terrain is a factor. If you're playing a narrative event, then the quality of the terrain will be a factor, not necessarily the type or the quantity. If you're playing an Age of Sigmar event, they have completely different terrain requirements. If you're playing Malifaux or Infinity is so terrain heavy it's not funny. Your relevant game system will also play a deciding factor in the reputation of that event. Because if you go to an Age of Sigmar event where they've got too much terrain or no terrain, because who needs it? You know, it's a fantasy game.
Yeah.
That can be an issue. So... yeah, you're right. The reputation of those events needs to be factored in, and you need to look at, if you can, photos of the year prior. If you can post up in a relevant group and go, hey, has anyone been to this event before? Like, if you can get first-hand experience from people, that can also help.
Yeah. So
particularly if you know them prior. Like, if you've got...
That's what I was going to say. You need to know them, because one of the things that I've noticed about gamers, and I say this with love and affection, is that gamers will quite often share their negative experiences and not necessarily share the positives.
Yeah.
So if you post up in a group that you know, full of virtual strangers, and you post up and go, oh, who's heard about this? You could then end up with a page of negatives and think, oh God, that's terrible. When in actual fact, that's just the negatives stand out.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I'm fortunate that a lot of the events that I'd consider going to, I have friends around the world who have been to those events.
Or who are running them.
Yeah, well, there is that as well. So finding out what the event's like and getting first-hand photos of those events and what the terrain looked like and prior mission packs and that sort of stuff is relatively easy. And a lot of it you can get online these days. Like if you Google Las Vegas Open 2019, I'm sure you'll find photos and links and videos and all sorts of stuff. If you do it for 2017, you'll probably find my videos and stuff that we did when I went over. And the events, like I actually watched those videos a couple of days ago, and the walkthrough of that hall when there were 450 people, like double it.
Yeah.
And that's just mind-bending. I hope they've got 15 to 20 minutes between the rounds just so you can find your table. Because moving 1,000 people through those rows when they were butted up 5 in a row, four in a row that year. They have to have gone to 5. It's the only way it'll fit.
I think it's going to be faster for people to duck under the tables.
Well, no, you got armies to lug around as well.
Yeah, I know. I was only joking. It
would
be faster
I did consider it the year I was there. They need to have time to move around the room because a 3-hour round, you could lose 20 minutes just moving around the bloody hall. If you go from table 13 to table 400.
I was going to say, if you've got table 2 to table 500, you could potentially be a 20-minute walk.
Well, the fact that
Get your steps up, though.
I dropped from 16th to 50th on one loss, which means I dropped from table 8 to table 25.
But they don't... Oh, do they actually seed their tables?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So your first round is the random round.
Yeah.
But you could go from table 400 to table, in theory, probably 100, 150, something like that, depending on what happens. Just very quickly, I have had Diffie, the owner of Down Under Pairings, message me back while we've been chatting, and he says it is 2 events plus the Open.
Okay.
So
I thought that would be the case.
Yeah.
It's just because, like I said, because it was listed as one of the... whatever the event.
Yeah, one of the certified events.
Certified events, because it's listed as one of the certified events. I was like, well, can you actually double dip here?
No, he's confirmed that it is 2 plus the Open. So you do have to attend. So for a WA player, you could come to Masters WA plus attend one of the other events and then head to Melbourne in February next year, or in 2021. Yeah, next year. For the final to be eligible. Yeah. So... if you're thinking about, say, heading over for Terracon or BrizCon, you could do a couple of different trips. And the good part about, obviously, East Coast flights is you could do it just the weekend. Yeah. So the reputation of the events is something you should consider as well. And a lot of the big events, like I say, things like the Alliance Open Series, London GT's reputation's on the mend at the moment.
But even with that, so it's a prime example of what I was talking about. If you went on a forum as a relatively new player and said, I'm thinking if you've been living under a rock for the last 3 years, I'm thinking of going to London GT.
What can I expect?
You are not going to hear good things.
Well, you might do from some, but I suspect...
Do you think?
Well, I suspect the majority will be, a couple of years ago they did this, this and this.
I think you would hear things like... Oh, you mean Foamgate? And, I don't think you would hear anything positive.
I definitely think that there's a level of reputation for all events. And when you take a big misstep like they managed to that year, that takes a lot of time to
heal,
move on. And I think that recognising that, the first thing they did was fix it for the following year. So that's been good. But we've seen photos from recent times where there was an ETC qualifier from one of the European countries that was all just plain MDF boards, no painted board, let alone the terrain, which didn't...
But if that's what people are used to.
Exactly.
So we're looking at it from...
We want painted terrain with mats.
From our perspective, with our set of, values or, whatever the right word for that is, expectations. But if that's what people are used to playing on... then and that's not important to them, then there's no issue with that. So that's, I guess, part of what having to look at what your values are and what you want out of it. So if you want to play on boards, with... If you're more interested...
Well, the thing is, it comes down, are you more interested in the game or are you interested in the experience? Because when you have painted armies on painted terrain with nice boards, with a good environment to work, a comfortable environment with water and aircon and carpets and lights and, like comparing, like you were saying, 10 people in a tin shed compared to LVO, you're dealing with two vastly different
ends of the
experiences.
Now I'm just going to segue that not quite so neatly into just a reminder. public service announcement that all of the objective secured events for 2020 at this point, I was going to say and beyond, but perhaps we'll discuss that towards the end of 2020, will require fully painted armies.
Yes.
Now, they required it last year as well. However, we were still...
Been quite lenient.
Yes. This year, we've actually made sure that it is written into the players pack what happens if the expectation isn't met. And if that expectation isn't met, then you'll be asked to remove that model from the table, well, whatever
models, yeah.
Yeah, from the table. So just letting you know that will be fully enforced this year.
Yep. So
if you have no painted army, you're going to have no models on the table.
Yep. So I think colloquially, we as a community, the big events are moving down that road. I think there's resistance from a component of the community that is more interested in the game than the hobby at large, that don't care about painted armies. They just want to play the game. And that's completely valid. It's their hobby.
Yep.
However, as an organizer, and I think most of the organisers around the world echo this, that have similar restrictions, is that you want to create an event that's a spectacle, that's more than just a game of chess that is plain models being shoved around a table. We want to create a situation where you come in...
create an experience.
Yeah. And certainly there's organisers out there that want that experience because they want to turn it into something more like an e-sport where, you can stream it and share it around the world, and then there's obviously opportunities there for businesses to get involved and sponsors and so on. And I think that having painted armies goes a long way towards that, just being able to tell them apart on a video stream rather than two grey armies. But I think most of the main events these days are in the same boat where, hey, painted is required. And, certainly there's... most of those big events are going down the same road we have, where it's gently, trying to enforce it, and then that's you come to a point where...
We've been going 5 years now.
Yeah, after 5 years we've gone enough's enough.
Yeah. And the gently will still happen with the other events so we're doing a couple of mixed gaming days, so Bolt Action, War Machine, Age of Sigmar.
Yeah.
Did I miss any?
Look, there's going to be a few that drop in and out. We're going to try and get some Blood Bowl happening and some Kill Team and Necromunda. And
I did miss some. There's potential to be more gentle with some of those that we're just starting out by hosting those events. But the ones that we've been doing for 5 years, it's time to... Yeah,
40K, particularly with some of the changes in the technology that have been made more readily available by Games Workshop in the form of contrast paints and those sorts of things. Not that they've... invented something new, but certainly the availability and awareness of the community at large,
the accessibility and awareness
has increased, which means that now there's less and less excuse to get armies to a minimum standard.
Yeah.
But anyway, we kind of digressed a little bit there.
I know. I think that's kind of all the things that I could think about when I read that question.
Budget's another thing to think about.
Oh yeah, of course. We sort of touched on that a little bit, though, I think.
We did. And as a West Aussie, you're going to be... if you're going to the East Coast and you budget yourself between $1,000 and $1,500 for the trip return, for your flights, accommodation, and the tournament entry, you're probably in about the right ballpark.
Probably in
depending on where you're going.
$1,000 for the alcohol.
You can do return to Melbourne these days for about $500 or $600 if you book it far enough in advance.
Yeah, you got to book early.
You're up for a couple $100 a night in accommodation, unless you can find like an Airbnb you can share with
7 other people.
A few people. You can get it down to $50 or $60 a night if you can find a share house with a couple of people, or find someone you can crash on the couch at.
That makes it a lot cheaper.
And then you've got your tournament entry, which will be between $50 and $100, depending on what you're doing and where you're going. And you can do a lot of those, like Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane even. Brisbane's a little bit more expensive for West Aussie, but you can do a return airfare for sort of $700-ish, depending on the time of year and how far in advance.
Yeah.
And again, your accommodation's not super expensive, depending on where you stay. So, $1,000, $1,100, $1,200.
Depends where the event's being held as well.
Well, that's kind of what I was about to say. Is Terracon, held in Narracourt, is a 4-hour drive out of... It's halfway between halfway between Melbourne and Adelaide. And it's one of the reasons why the attendance for Terracon is 50-50 from Victoria and South Australia, or it has been in years gone by. Because it's this,
It's 4 hours.
It's a 4-hour drive to drive there.
Yeah. But that does mean that for people who are travelling from other states, you've not only got your airfares, but you also need car hire as well.
Yeah. Although I will say I've had a couple of people in past years who've asked me to go to Terracon, and they've said, look, fly to here. I will pick you up from the airport. You can crash at my house that night, and you can get in the car with me, and we'll drive out together.
And that's where some of the gaming communities, I think, can come in, can be really lovely, in that people will do that.
Yeah.
So, if you put it out there and go, oh, hey, this is where I'm planning on going, can I carpool with someone and chip in some money for petrol, then people are often up for that.
Yeah. I mean, Terracon on the list is probably the one that's... Oh, and obviously New Zealand. It's New Zealand. The others that tend to be in sort of major cities. I have no idea where the New Zealand one is.
No. New Zealand, I don't sadly have I'm not great with Australian geography.
No.
But I actually have no idea with New Zealand.
Well, should we start having a quick... Since we're talking about the events, shall we have a quick chat about Terracon and...
So, okay, one of the things that I wanted to say was that so we've got the Down Under Championship certified events. Two that aren't on here. One of them that's obviously very close to my heart. So the first one that's not on here is CanCon.
Yep.
And then the one that's very close to my heart that is definitely worth travelling for and isn't on here is Southern Hemisphere Open.
Yep.
And people should definitely jump on a plane from wherever you are.
And come to show.
Bus, boat, jet ski, whatever, and come to Southern Hemisphere Open.
I've had a few people ask why show isn't on this.
Mm-hmm.
It would slot in between BrisCon and Terracon. Part of the reason it's not on there is the goal for the championships was to have 2-day events for 40K.
Yeah.
And we
don't want to do that.
We've deliberately tried to shy away from 2-day events so you can experience as much of show as we can offer you.
Yeah.
So you can do different things on different days. The less important, and that's from our point of view. That's purely a selfish thing for us, that we want to give you a convention rather than a 2-day tournament.
Yeah, I don't think that that's selfish from us. I think that that's us saying...
Well, no, we could easily have just put a 2-day tournament on at show and plugged it into this circuit, but it's not what show is about.
No, that's right.
So it is... Selfish isn't the right word, but it's a deliberate decision from our end not to have show featured in this. I also know that Terracon happens the week after show.
Yeah.
So rather than competing, when we spoke to when we got approached to do this, we've got WATC, which is our other 2-day event that happens, which isn't really suited for this event, which gives us Masters, which actually slotted in quite well.
Except for the fact that it's December and really close to Christmas.
Yeah, it is. So as we already mentioned, though, Terracon... Actually, we'll start with BrisCon, because that's the first one on the list that's happening.
You didn't want to quickly touch on CanCon?
Well, we've spoken to Chris from CanCon a couple of times now.
Mm-hmm.
We've also been on his podcast, which is the Frontline Gaming Australia podcast.
Yes, but very quickly it happens over the Australia Day long weekend.
Yep.
It is probably the biggest 40K event that Australia hosts.
Well, there is a big one, ARC 40K in Melbourne.
Yeah.
It has more players. However, CanCon is a higher points value because ARC's a hobby event.
Yeah.
So CanCon is a competitive one. It's ITC ranked. It's the final for the Australian ITC series as well for the year. So if you have to be at CanCon, and generally if you win CanCon, it'll be enough rank. If you're ranked in the top 3 by the time you hit the ITC rankings for CanCon and you win CanCon, it's generally enough to push you over the edge to win the Australian ITC circuit. It's the 25, 26, 27 of January this year.
I would have just left it at Australia Day long weekend.
I don't remember whether it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or whether it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I think it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, because Australia Day is a Sunday, which means the Monday will be a public holiday.
There you go.
So, yeah, CanCon's, again, it's because it is the end of the ITC circuit, I believe that was the reason, or at least part of the decision as to why it's not included in the Australian Down Under Championships circuit.
Oh, look, why it's part of that or not part of that wasn't really why I wanted to bring it up now. I just thought we're talking about events that are worth travelling for.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we can do a podcast without mentioning CanCon as one of Australia's events that's...
One of the biggest events, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so covered that, tick, tick. BrisCon is being held April 2020 in, obviously...
Brisbane,
Queensland.
April 27th, I believe, is the official date for the...
So is that the public holiday around Anzac Day?
Yes, so I'm assuming it'll be 25, 26, 27 in April. It's being hosted by Queensland Gamers Guild, is who hosted it in 2019. I'm assuming it'll be the same for 2020.
So I just want to put this out there for people who are listening. What are people's thoughts on hosting an event on Anzac Day? Because it's something that we've talked about, but because neither of us are military personnel, while we both have families that we're not. So it's been something that we've been quite sensitive to, whether or not that's something that
whether it's disrespectful to past and
present.
present.
Is it disrespectful, or is it a way to bring people together to celebrate Anzac Day? So it'd be interested in hearing people's thoughts on that.
BrisCon was held at Mount Gravatt Showgrounds in 2019. It was hosted by the Normal Blokes 40K podcast and Queensland Gamers Guild. I believe it'll be the same team for hosting it for 2020. Mount Gravatt isn't too bad in terms of a stay. You're probably, depending on where you stay, if you stay south of the river in Brisbane, you'll cut your travel time down significantly because we stayed north when we went there in May for the Warhammer Heroes Awards, and without really understanding the layout of the city, stay south of the river for that one. And you'll cut a 40-minute travel time down to...
I don't think they call it south of the river.
Well, it is though.
Yeah, I know. And that makes sense to us, but I think they use different lingo.
Anyway, there is accommodation closer to Mount Gravatt, which won't cost you an arm and a leg. They had... it was 2 days. It was only a 2-day event in 2019, so it may just be 25, 26
Well, it's down
this
there
year.
as the 27th.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the 2019 event, not the 2020 event.
Okay.
It was ETC-style missions, 5 rounds, 2 days, 2,000 points, and 64-player cap.
That's what it was last year.
That was for 2019.
And so I guess that's what we were talking about earlier, where you look at previous events to try and make a judgment on what it's going to be.
Yep.
That's what we're doing at the moment.
Exactly.
Going through their previous Facebook pages and having a look and see what are they doing.
And I'll make sure these all go in the show notes so you can go and check the links out that we're looking at the moment
because
as well.
We can't find current links for the 2020
No,
events
some of them
yet.
don't have 2020 events.
Yeah. So then TerraCon in South Australia.
So TerraCon...
June 2020.
It is a private event, which it's a private group. Sorry, so I don't know I can actually share it. I will do my best.
If it's private, you can. If it's secret, you can't.
It is a private group.
Yeah, so that just means that you can share it and then people have to request to join.
Yeah. So, like I say, this we have the long weekend on the 1st of June here in WA. They have it on the 8th.
Yeah.
So I believe this will be held over the 6th, 7th and 8th. Again, not 100% certain whether it's 2 days or 3.
So obviously people have already come to show on the 29th, 30th of May and
the
1st of June.
Yep.
Nope, 30th of May, 31st of May and 1st of June.
Yep.
So they'll have been to that and all ready and prepared to go to South Australia TerraCon the following weekend.
Yep. So they did... it was a 2-day event in 2019. So it was a Friday afternoon set up at the showgrounds.
Yeah.
And then the Saturday, Sunday, it was 5 games again. Narracourt, one of the issues you will have with Narracourt is accommodation because it is a country town.
Yeah, but there's normally lots of accommodation like at the pubs and
well, that's it.
caravan parks.
They actually do go through that with when you join the group if you're planning on going. They can help you with finding that sort of stuff. So the venue is the Cartwright Pavilion found at Narracourt Showgrounds on Smith Street.
Actually, often a lot of the showgrounds you can actually camp at.
I don't know with this one. There's an after-hours venue, and you can actually sleep at the after-hours venue. But I would contact the TO for that one if you wanted to try and sleep at the showgrounds rather than just showing it with a tent.
I'm just saying often you can.
Yeah. Terracon's been going for quite some time now. It's not a brand new event. It's been going for a number of years now. It's always generally been in, and certainly the last couple of years at least, it's been the high 80s, 90s in terms of attendance.
Yeah.
I think 96 was what it was capped at for 2019. And after dropouts, I think they ended up with the high 80s, which is, par for the course for most of these big events. You have dropouts and things happen.
Yeah.
It was 2,000 points, 5 games. I believe it was all done through BCP in 2019, but it may be moving to down under pairings for 2020. I'm not certain. I'm assuming because it's on this list it will be. It used the ITC scoring format for 2019, so it was the 1,500-0 for win-loss-draw, win-draw-loss, and then used ITC scoring for 2019. So, again, it's reasonably safe to say South Australia is quite heavily invested in ITC, so that's a reasonable supposition at this point to say that it's likely to be that for 2020. Moving on, we hit New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
Battle of the Binderworms.
Yeah, that's right.
Binderwins? Binderwins.
Brindawins.
And now I'm not even going to try and pronounce where it is.
That's also June 2020. I'm assuming that's later in June.
The date I have for that is just June at the moment, but I'm assuming it'll be the tail end of June. It's happening at... I'm really, really sorry. I don't mean to offend anyone. I try and pronounce this.
Just don't.
Okay.
We'll put a link up.
It's
and people can have
It's
a look.
north of Auckland, so you'd fly into Auckland, and yeah, it's I don't know. I haven't got a scale for this. I can't even tell you how far it is, and I can't pronounce it. I just don't know what to do with it. I'll put a link to the Google map as well because it's
Sadly, I can't see it, so I can't even help you. What a shame.
WHANGAREI.
Okay, no idea.
Yeah.
So
that's the 40K.
Any information on size or?
So the New Zealand ITC circuit commences in 2020.
So it's ITC.
And they have 8 events across the year. They've got one in February, March, then one in late March, and then June, which is the one we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And then July, August, October, and November. And they move it around the country. So you got Hamilton, Auckland, Wellington, then this one, which is the only one I can't actually pronounce. Then back to Auckland, then to Rotorua, Auckland, and maybe the November one might be a bit difficult as well. If you want any information on New Zealand tournaments, you can head to the New Zealand 40K Cabal page on Facebook, which is a podcast. And I'll make sure I've got a link to that in the show notes so you can go and check it out. So it will almost certainly be ITC. Mm-hmm. The New Zealand community has grown over the last 12 to 18 months. So they're back coming, as of 2018 was their first time back into ATC. They had a full team of 8 with no ringers for 2019. And it looked like they were going to have 2 teams for 2020, a North and a South Island, but it looks like it'll be a single team for 2020 instead. So that's New Zealand. Definitely worth checking out the New Zealand 40K Cabal podcast as well. The ACT event is WinterCon. WinterCon's another one that's been around a little while now. It's presented by Warzone Wargaming, which is Warzone Central Coast. So the 2019 one happened 20th, 21st of July. There's a Facebook page you can go and check out. They've got a bunch of photos from the event. And they also hosted the 40K Masters for 2019 as well. Mm-hmm. So lots of painted terrain, battle mats. It's very heavily supported, and I believe it was ITC. New South Wales is another ITC dominant area of the country.
Well, that's not where this is.
Yes, it is.
WinterCon, it's in ACT.
Which is, ACT is where?
It's not in New South Wales.
Well, no, but it's part of the New South Wales community because the ACT is within New South Wales.
Well, that depends. I count ACT as ACT, not New South Wales.
No, it's New South Wales.
It's not. And I reckon people who live in ACT would really think that it's not New South Wales.
In any case, I know there's a lot of crossover between the community for New South Wales and the ACT. Mm-hmm. And that whole region is very heavily influenced by the ITC circuit and format because of CanCon. Because they want the ITC rankings because they can get to CanCon.
Yeah.
Anyway. So yeah, you can check out Warzone Wargaming, which is at Warzone Central Coast on Facebook. And they've got the 2019 stuff still up there, so I'm assuming the 2020 stuff is still coming. EastCon is Victoria. That's run by a friend of ours, Matt Morrisoli. In August, I believe it'll be for 2020. It's going to September for 2020. I think he had 60 players for 2019. 1750 rather than 2000. And they were modified ITC missions, which was an interesting one. Nice big prize pool, hobby and battle scores, so there was an overall award, if you like. And then, there was a whole bunch of streaming on that because the boys from Down Under Network turned up and streamed stuff, and there's plenty of those. You can go and check it out on their Twitch page. Matt Morrisoli's he won the ITC circuit for 2018, so he's going to LVO this year because the award for winning it was the flights, accommodation, everything to go to LVO. So he's actually heading over to LVO to, along with many others actually this year, to compete, which I don't know if they're doing CanCon as well. So that'll be interesting to see if they do, because LVO is like 2 weeks after CanCon, or a week after CanCon. So Matt knows his stuff. So EastCon would be one that, if you're looking for a competitive tournament in Victoria, would definitely be one worth checking out.
Not that the other ones wouldn't be worth checking out.
I said Victoria. This is the only one in Victoria on the list.
Okay. New South Wales, Moab. That's been around for quite some time.
Yeah, Moab has as well.
Do you know what Moab stands for?
You know what? Mother of all battles.
Ah.
I was about to say, you know what? I actually do in this case.
So that's October 2020.
So that was actually in Sylvania, New South Wales. So not necessarily in Sydney. It's probably one worth understanding where it is, so you make sure you book your venue and accommodation accordingly, and also transport times, because you don't want to be booking in Sydney and then...
Oh, gosh, yeah. 'Cause that's the other thing. I don't think that we're used to, like in WA, I don't think we're used to travel times that a lot of some of the other states experience.
I don't know. For Perth, Perth metropolitan area, it's kind of where we live is about 50 minutes to everywhere.
Yeah.
And when you start talking about going down to Beyond Games and Hobby, it's an hour and 40, and if you want to head down to Albany, it's about 4 hours. Looking at Sylvania, when it comes to New South Wales, you're actually south of Sydney, and I reckon it'd be again with no scale, it's hard to say. It's south of Botany Bay.
That means nothing to me.
So, it's not in the. It's not near the bridge or anything like that. It's a decent trip south. Obviously, with all the fires that are raging through that part of the world at the moment as well.
Country, yep.
I don't know what that means for Moab for 2020.
Well, it's not until October, so
but
hopefully they'll have extinguished them by then.
I'm more thinking about any, if there's buildings burned down or damage and that sort of stuff. But Moab's been going a few years now as well.
And then last on the list is little old ours.
Yeah, so our 6th annual Masters event.
Mm-hmm. So if we took this back, so 6th annual Masters, chances are it's going to be probably 6 games, 2,000 points, somewhere around there, somewhere between 1850, somewhere around there-ish. We most likely to be using ETC format.
Yep.
For that.
There's Brisbane, Victoria, and WA are most likely to be your ETC style events, and then your South Australia, New South Wales, ACT, and New Zealand will be your ITC ones. That's not to say the others may or may not be one or the other.
With Masters, we're getting our events and sort of categorising them into one of 3 categories: narrative, competitive, or hobby-driven. There will still be hobby components for Masters. However, it is being billed as one of our more competitive events.
Yep, absolutely.
So that and WATC are probably our most competitive events out of our 40K event series. So that's a brief. We also have alcohol available for consumption, which is definitely worth travelling.
That's why our insurance costs what it does.
It's one of the reasons. And we generally have 60-ish players in the room for Masters.
Yeah.
So
60 to 70 for our 40K Masters event.
Yeah, that's true. So that's kind of a brief recap of what Masters is for us. But if we were looking at Masters as an event for people to travel to, how do people know that it's worth travelling to one of our events?
Self-promotion isn't necessarily one of our strong suits.
No, we do suck at it. So that's going to be one of my New Year's resolutions.
Is to try and be better at it?
Yes.
Fair enough.
Have we mentioned our Patreon?
Look, I think most of the WA community know us, and I mean, we got people commenting and sending us messages over the Christmas break saying, hey, I got recommended to come to a tournament for you guys. I hear really good things from the stores that we visit. This will be my first tournament. And we've been going 5 years now, and they're coming to First Blood for the first time.
Yeah, but we suck at self-promotion.
Yep.
So we've got to get better at that.
We generally do a lot of live stuff on our Facebook page from events. There's generally a bunch of photos that go on there. The blog also tends to get photos on it, although...
I haven't been very good at that last year.
No.
Suffered from a severe case of burnout.
Yeah.
So...
look, we're always willing to answer questions. We try and do them as immediately as possible when we do get questions.
So I've mentioned what we're not good at. What are we good at?
Look, in terms of the organisation of the day and the support we get from the local community is amazing. Mm-hmm. For the last Masters, we actually stepped up and added more terrain and, upped the density of the boards and tried to rectify some of the line of sight issues for some of the lighter tables.
I think outside of that, I'm going to answer my own question.
Go for it.
What I hope that we're good at is I hope that we run professional organised events. So everything...
I just want people to have a good time and roll dice.
I want people to have a good time and roll dice, but I think it's easier to do that if somebody needs to step up and be in charge of making sure that the venue's set up, that, you've got a good venue, you've air conditioned, regardless of whether it's summer or winter, because when you get 60 to 120 people in a room, it gets warm.
Yeah.
So air conditioning, that there's enough toilets, that you've got food and
lighting
drink and good lighting so you can see what's happening, so there's enough room to walk around the tables, so there are table numbers and people know what tables they're going to. So you've got your scoring system set up so that all of your missions are really clear and well defined and people know what they're playing in advance, so that everything is transparent and people know what to expect and they know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, and there should be no surprises if people actually read the players' packs.
Yeah.
So I think that we do that quite well. I think that we are quite organised and structured, and that we've got all of those SOPs in place and that kind of thing to make sure that our events run really well. We're relatively personable.
Depends on when you catch us.
It does. Really does. But I think that we're inclusive, and it's, I hope it's not cliquey.
I think, we've worked fairly hard to make sure that you can come and chat to whoever you feel like chatting to at the time.
I guess what I mean by not cliquey, what I hope is that the same rules apply to everyone. So when you're playing in WATC, I'll pull you up on the same rule as I'll pull somebody else up, which isn't technically true because I'm much harsher on you than I am on anybody else.
Yeah, but I've got mates who, when I've TO'd for them, who say I'm harsher on them than other people they watch.
So actually, it's probably better off to not know us and not have us be nasty to you, because we're more likely to be...
I think it's just holding people that you know well...
To the same standard.
Yeah, to at least the same standard, but in some cases it can be often to a higher standard because...
Well, we really shouldn't be doing that. It should be the same standard.
Well, yeah,
so
but
we'll
I think...
work on that.
Yeah, but
Add
I think...
that to our New Year's resolutions
by the nature of it, though, if you, I won't name names, but there are a couple of the guys who... I know that they know what they're doing. I know that they know that I know that they know. So, it can come across as a little bit harsh when you go over and go, really? Why are you asking this?
Well, that's not the same, because that's still holding them to the same standard. It's just not, if it was somebody who you didn't know as well, you would perhaps be a little bit more polite.
Yeah.
Whereas when it's somebody who you know well, you can. So, and I will often say that the meaner I am to you and the more I make fun of you, it means the more I like you. If I'm nice to you, then I probably don't like you very much.
Or you don't know her.
Or I don't know you very well, yeah. Because I tend to not be rude and sarcastic to people I've met for the very first time. I wait at least 20 minutes before I start making fun of you sometimes. But I think that, when you go over and if you know it, then it's okay to go over and go, you know this. Why are you asking me this?
Yeah.
Whereas if it's somebody who you don't know and it's a genuine question, then you can kind of go, yeah, look, no problem. Let's open the book. Let's have a look. Let's go through that. And so that's not about holding people to a higher standard. It's just calling people out.
Yeah.
When you know that they know it.
Yeah, fair enough.
What else is good about our events that people should get on a plane and fly over, even though Aaron just lives relatively close and doesn't need to fly to this?
He actually lives about a 50-minute drive away, so...
He doesn't have to fly here.
No, that's true.
He's got a really big drone.
40k by remote. I've actually commented on that a few times. I'd love to try and play it by remote.
It would be good.
Look, I think we put on a good show. I think we offer you a good experience we keep it as cheap as we possibly can within the constraints of our costs. We try and make sure everyone has a good time. We try and make sure it's judged fairly.
And part of the thing with costs is that we do actually run it as a professional event. So we do have licenses, we've got insurances, we make sure that we do have a fire and emergency evacuation plan. So while I was joking before about how many hard hats and fluoro vests are there, I have an evacuation plan for every event that we run.
Yeah.
And, for show, I have however many people who are briefed in that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's... And this comes back to, we've said it before in other episodes, that when you change from doing a hobby style tournament where you're running it for yourself and
8 mates, 7 mates,
even for 20 mates, as soon as you step it out beyond that, and the venue, one of the biggest things we had was the venue start asking us for our insurance details, and okay, well I have to go and how do I get insurance?
Well, that's never been an issue. We had insurance from our very first event.
Yeah, but prior to that, we'd run events through other clubs and that sort of stuff. And all of a sudden you go, hang on, I need insurance. How do I get insurance? I have to get an ABN.
Yeah. Okay.
And you start going through some of the other stuff that you have to do. And so when we moved venues for the tail end of 2019 and obviously now into 2020, I've submitted all the documentation that shows our public liability insurance. We have to supply that stuff when we get our liquor licenses. And then obviously you still need to have your RSA and manager's license and all that sort of stuff for the alcohol side of things, which is another cost.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting how much of it changes when you take the next step from running a smaller event to running a bigger event. There's a lot of things that happen that the average punter probably doesn't see. I dread to think what the costs would be for something like Nova or Adepticon or LVO.
I actually think that LVO in Vegas would probably be a lot more affordable than we think because of the way that Vegas works.
Yeah.
So...
Well, that's it. If they sell out the hotel, they probably get the venue for free.
Well, that's it.
Or at least at a heavily discounted number.
So they're not... Well, they've got the opportunity of not only selling out the hotel, but also all the food and alcohol that gets put through. Yeah. And, if I owned a big hotel like that, I'd be offering the free...
The venue space,
venue, so if you could do that for me. Yeah.
But even so, we're at a midpoint in our growth at the moment, and it's partly limited by being in WA.
Partly limited by time.
Yep. Where we're not doing... we do still do standard size events, but shows the next step up.
Yeah.
And it's not LVO sized, but it adds a whole...
We still have 3,000 people coming through the door.
And it does create a whole bunch of other challenges for us.
Yeah.
So, know why you're going to the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Or the event, because things like LVO have other things that happen. There are workshops for painting and gaming and all sorts of stuff that go on there as well. And things like Nova and Adepticon have similar workshops and panels.
Set a realistic budget for it.
Yep. And then do some homework on the event itself.
Set a realistic budget, then add 25%.
No. You just set a realistic budget for the travel and accommodation and the tournament, and then set a second budget for spending money.
Yeah, I'd still add 25%.
Take a credit card.
Well, I don't know. I add 25% to it whenever we go. I will always add an extra 25% because I think it may be the only time I'm there. I don't want to go. I'd really love to go out. What was that massive gun that we went out in?
Oh, the M82 sniper, the 50 cal.
Yeah. I'd really love to go out and do that, but it's a bit expensive, and is that gonna? Yeah. How's that going to affect the budget? It's a once in a lifetime opportunity potentially. Do it.
Fair enough. Look, and there are plenty of events, both Australia wide and abroad.
Yeah.
There's events that happen for 40k in China. There's events that happen through Russia, all through Europe, North America, Canada. Not so sure about South America. But...
So I'm just giggling because of the number of times that we've been pulled up and people have, they're going through the X-ray machines at airports because the resin models look like giant packets of cocaine. So I'm just thinking about getting that into and out of
Colombia,
South
Brazil.
America. Not sure about that actually.
No. I've seen many a model swabbed with them going, what the hell is that? But yeah, I think, if you budget sensibly, you do a little bit of homework on the event and you understand why you want to go to that event, then you can't go too far wrong if you stick to the well-known, historical events.
Yeah.
And I'd certainly, wherever you go, if you can go with mates, I think it adds a lot to the experience. And there's nothing stopping you going solo.
If you can't, then all of these groups have got Facebook pages and whatnot. Jump on there and say, hey, I'm an Aussie coming,
Anything I should know about, where's everyone going to be hanging out?
Yeah, strike up some friendships with people who are going so that you actually know someone when you get over there.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I've got.
That's all you got?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that works quite well. Oh, well, okay. I was waiting for, we're going to start wrapping the episode up then. And
yeah, I thought you would do that.
Oh, okay.
I told you that's all I've got. So now you can start wrapping it up.
Okay, put your headphones back on. Stop walking away. Well, on that note, if you want to check out anything we've talked about, you can head to Down Under Pairings, hit the Circuits tab, and one of the drop-down options there is Down Under Championships, so you can check out all the events that are happening for the Down Under Championships certified events for 2020.
Will you put a link for that in the show notes?
I can do. There'll also be links to the 6 events, the BrisCon, TerraCon, Battle above the Brenda Winds, WinterCon, EastCon and Moab for the most recent copies of all those events. Most of them will be 2019 links, but they will be there so you can go and check out what they were like for 2019.
Do we have a Masters link for 2020 up yet?
There is a Facebook event for 2020 Masters.
Awesome.
So I'll put that in there as well if you want to go and register your interest there.
Mm-hmm.
If you
pop show up as well.
Okay. If you have any events that you've travelled to, either abroad or overseas, feel free to share them with us.
Abroad or overseas?
Like
that's the
interstates.
Same thing.
It's New Year's Day. Leave me be. If you've been to an event outside of your native territory. Well, I'm just thinking if you're listening to this,
someone your area.
That's okay.
That?
Let's do that. I'm just saying for us.
If you've travelled outside of your local area for any kind of event, we'd love to hear about what your experience was like.
Yes.
How's that?
Okay, let's do that. So this is why you should have wrapped it up.
Oh dear me!
Just me travelling to Inaloo for a 40k tournament count. It's like a 35-minute drive, 40-minute drive.
I think it might, because honestly, I don't go past Gosnells at the moment. So, which for people who don't know where we are,
it's about a 10-minute drive.
It's an 8-minute drive on a good day and a 15-minute drive on a bad day.
Well, you might be driving me to Inaloo, depending on what the doctor says next week.
I think I'm busy that day.
Okay, I might have to bum a lift from someone.
All right. Have we got anything else to chat about?
No, we're going to stay on schedule for 2020. You can check us out live every alternating Wednesday to the podcast. Mm-hmm. We're normally live around 8:30 Western Australian time at night.
PM.
And then obviously every alternate week we drop in the podcast. If you've got anything you want to suggest for the podcast in terms of topics you'd like us to cover for 2020, you can drop us a private message via Facebook. You can email us obsec@optusnet.com.au, or you can post it publicly on the Facebook page. If you know us privately, you can also send it to us as a private message.
Mm-hmm. As much as I have been joking about the patrons thing that we have, what is it called?
Patreon. Patreon, yep.
I'm just going to mention it because we're not very good at self-promotion. So
we have to thank everyone who's on our Patreon page as well.
We do, which I was about to do before you jumped in and
go
interrupted.
For it.
So I'm not
you asked me to wrap up, but go for it.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't mean I can't. I've been living with you for how long? I've learned to take a tangent. We've had Patreon for a little over a year now.
Yep.
And we've got a few people who have been with us from the very start, and then we've had more and more people who have joined in over the last 12 months, and as a result of that we've been able to buy some new recording equipment, and we've used it to pay for web hosting, and I think we're kind of trying to save up to get a new laptop to be able to improve our recording capabilities.
We'd intended to do that with the last set of money that we got from Patreon, but that ended up being for lapel mics, and hopefully once we sort out some of the audio with that, it'll let us be a bit more mobile at events. We can record stuff as we move around the room.
Yeah. So I guess if anybody happens to have a spare $5 US a month or whatever the other options are, then we appreciate any and all.
Yep. There's also a private podcast that goes out on there, which we have to record
today, because that's due out today.
No, it's going next. It's not going to be today. It's going to be next Wednesday.
I've had a thought about that, but anyway. So there's 12 or 13 episodes of that sat there. The first 10 dig really deep into the tabletop tournament prep guide, and then there's a few more that are in there around ETC and ITC.
Yeah.
And
now that we've moved stuff around at home, we're also going to hopefully be able to do some more video content from the little studio space while we continue to move stuff around in the house, and then hopefully by middle of the year we'll have a proper studio space all set up for recording games, and should be quite exciting for the second half of the year.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that any and all money that we do receive through Patreon goes directly into being able to produce more content and doing it better.
Yeah, we try and do the best quality we can with the funds that we have, and Patreon just means that we get to do that sooner.
Yeah, most definitely. So if you pop a link for that there as well, and as you said, thank you very much to everyone who has been contributing and has helped us be able to buy the new equipment, and has had faith in us and supported us and has listened and joined in on all the different things that we've had.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I've got.
Okay. Well, in that case then, we're going to say goodbye. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for listening.
Have a wonderful 2020.
Yep. Head on over to the Facebook page, and Emma posted up New Year's resolutions. Mm-hmm. Feel free to comment there and tell us what you're hoping to achieve in 2020 for the hobby. Particularly
the people who hope to finish painting everything that's in their painting pile and not buy anything else before
they're liars.
Painting. I love reading that because it makes me laugh so
they're
much.
Liars. Look, right. I can honestly sit here and say I haven't bought any models for 2020. I haven't.
Well done. It's been, 8 hours?
It's 20 past 1 in the afternoon, so...
You haven't been awake 8 hours.
No, it's true. I still haven't bought anything. I was awake after midnight, so I could have bought something then.
Well done.
But, maybe that becomes a countdown as to my first... I mean, I'm not going to count hobby supplies, like paints and stuff. They don't count.
Oh, really? Do they not?
They don't count.
Right.
I'm talking models at this point. And before you say it, when the packages arrive, they were bought in 2019, not 2020.
Right.
So... anything that I buy as of now.
Have a wonderful 2020. May it be filled with lots of new gaming systems, new models, not for you, for either of those things, painting supplies, fun times hobbying, and happy gaming, everyone.
You've been listening to the Objective Secured podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, you can visit our website, objectivesecured.com.au. You can find us on Facebook, Facebook/Objective Secured, or you can email us obsec@optusnet.com.au. Thanks for listening.